Hello, this is Rosemary Orchard, and welcome to another edition of Screencasts Online. In this episode, I'm going to dive into the Shortcuts app on iOS. Before we get started, I'll give you a brief history. Shortcuts has changed significantly over the last few years. Once upon a time, there was an app called Workflow, which was later bought by Apple, and that's when they renamed it to Shortcuts. Last year at WWDC, and then with the release of iOS 12, we saw quite a few changes to the app, predominantly being able to trigger shortcuts directly with Siri. There have been a number of changes, to the point where I'm going to start from the very beginning with shortcuts on iOS 13. Speaking of the beginning, it's easier than it ever has been. Shortcuts is now installed on all iOS devices running iOS 13. If you've uninstalled it, you can open the App Store, type in Shortcuts, and then reinstall the app. Shortcuts being essentially part of the operating system offers us a significant number of advantages, which you'll see as we go through. Let's start with an overview of the app before we dive into all the specifics. When you first open Shortcuts, you'll see a screen, My Shortcuts. This might be empty, or if you've used the feature on iOS 12 to add things to Siri from specific apps, these will show up here as shortcuts. Of course, if you've used Shortcuts before and made shortcuts, they'll be here as well. The next tab across the bottom is Automation, and as this implies, this gives us ways where we can automatically or somewhat automatically run our shortcuts. Here you can see I have a series of automations from the Home app. Don't worry, these are still in the Home app, so if you have any friends or family who wouldn't want to use shortcuts, they won't be missing out. However, the Home automations that show up here can be enhanced, and we can add more automations, including personal automations. I'll come back to that later. Our final tab is the Gallery. In the Gallery, we have a few different options. Across the top, we have collections of different shortcuts. These are provided by the Shortcuts team for us. Our next section, Shortcuts from your apps, are, well, as it implies, shortcuts from your apps. Let's click on See All to see a little bit more here. I have two suggested shortcuts from my apps. First being the Show VIP letterbox and the second being Dictate New Draft. These are apps which could be Apple apps or other apps, as shown here. If you've used this feature on iOS 12, then it was previously found in Settings. I'll go back to the gallery here, and then I'll just scroll down. Here we also have some other sample shortcuts for us. For example, the toothbrush timer, to make sure that we don't have any emergency dentist appointments. I'm going to scroll back up, and I'm going to add our very first shortcut, just to give you an overview of how this works. I'm going to click on the plus for Dictate New Draft, and when it pops up, it's adding it to Siri. This is the same user interface that we had last year with iOS 12, or almost. Now it says When I Say, and we can type something in here. For example, dictation time. Below the When I Say, we have Do, and this is the action that our shortcut is going to carry out. Then all we do is we click down onto the Add to Siri button. This says Added to My Shortcuts, so now if we go to My Shortcuts, we can see I have a new shortcut called Dictation Time. It has the drafts icon, and it says Dictate New Draft. Let's click on the three dots in the top right hand corner of this shortcut to see exactly what happens. This shortcut is very simple, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with creating simple shortcuts. In fact, if you've never created shortcuts before, I'd highly recommend that you start by creating shortcuts that are just one or two actions. You can, of course, get more complex later once you've got the hang of things. This particular shortcut just runs the action Dictate New Draft.
That's just a quick preview of one of this week's Apple-related tutorials from Screencasts Online. Screencasts Online is your premium source of Apple-related video tutorials. All of our members get access to brand new, up-to-date tutorials each week, as well as unlimited access to our entire video archive full of Mac and iOS-related tutorials. You can stream and download all of our videos on your Mac, iPad and iPhone, and even your Apple TV using the members-only Screencasts Online Apple TV app. Membership also includes a complimentary subscription to the digital Screencasts Online monthly magazine, published each month and packed with videos, articles, reviews, as well as hints and tips covering all aspects of the Mac, iPad, iPhone, and all of the other fantastic Apple products. So, if you're ready to start getting the most out of your Apple devices, visit screencastsonline.com today and become a Screencasts Online member.